Oh, there's Ron.
So Orv is on the phone. I'm not sure if he's labeled in everyone else's screen. We don't have feedback on this. All right. I'm not seeing anyone else. I'm not seeing anyone in the waiting room for public comment either at this point, but they could pop in at any moment. So we'll get to that when we get to it. Okay, well, if Maura decides to pop in, I'll let her in. Tara, the floor is yours.
Phil, do you need a roll call? I think we heard Orville's on the phone. Oh, you're muted, I guess. Need everyone to unmute. Andrew?
Yeah, I'm okay.
There we go. Okay,
The space bar to unmute. I
perfect.
was playing with the minutes, so I went off the screen.
Sure.
Can Ron hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
And Orville can hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. Well, then I think we'll move on to the consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda and the minutes from the last meeting?
I have, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Just need a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda and minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, Barb made the motion and I heard Amy second. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any announcements that need to be made, Andrew?
Nope.
Any presentations? It's gonna be a
Nope.
quick one. All right, do we have anyone in the waiting room now for public comment?
No, and no, nothing from Maura either.
Okay. Then I guess we're gonna move on to director's report.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Somewhat. Good to see everyone. I have done this before with Parks and Rec Advisory Board back in July. I will do this again on Monday with them. So the intention of this meeting really was to get everyone back together, kind of get everyone familiar with Zoom, because there's a chance that we're going to be doing this for quite a while. I also just kind of want to make sure that we're all on the same page of where we stand with everything from our previous meetings to now, and all the updates that I have sent over the summer. So essentially, I have sent out the director's report already in the email like I usually do. I hope everyone had a chance to read those, kind of get an idea of what's going on, and formulate any questions if needed. And anyone who is watching live or has questions for this committee, please reach out to me, amaciver@marquettemi.gov. These director's reports will be available in the minutes in the October meeting. So again, I'm going to leave this back to the committee for any questions, discussion, and comments on my director's report.
So I guess the only question I have is what exactly, if we even have the information, what transpired with Dark Sky? I know that we had that on our agenda on a regular basis, and I think they came and presented to us at one point, and then I saw the article in the Mining Journal about that. Just wondered if you had information you could share as
Yes,
to sort of
great.
how that went down.
Great question. I was looking forward to discussing this.
Oh, okay.
So with Dark Sky Park, Marquette Astronomical Society has been a great partner, trying to work with them, trying to make things work out at Presque Isle Park. Multiple things transpired over the last 3 years with that. We did determine that it would be successful at the park. However, we started noticing a lot of operational type issues between Public Works and the police, making sure that the park was closed at a certain time. On top of that, we were facing a road closure with the salamanders in the spring. And then on top of that, leading up to the spring, we started having a multitude of issues that was kind of discussed in previous meetings. People getting locked in, trespassing, other issues stemming to camping and campfires. And after a lot of city staff discussion, we kind of determined that it's just not an appropriate venue anymore for anything or activities after hours. There's a lot of unwarranted, unpermitted type activities going on at Presque Isle, mostly the camping, and that's where our biggest concern is the likelihood of a fire from some of these people camping. It's also stemming from a lot of misinformation that is online in regards to other Presque Isle parks, more in particular the one in the Western UP where they do allow rustic camping. So you'd be amazed at how many phone calls we get in this office every single day of people looking for campsites at Presque Isle Park, and then we tell them that there's not, and then they proceed to argue with us saying that they saw it online. So again, there's a lot of misinformation. We're trying to educate the public. We're trying to educate tourists and trying to keep everyone informed on this committee of why things are transpiring the way they are. There's just it's just a multitude of misinformation and misunderstandings. So what transpired after that was the Mining Journal decided to write an article about this. They did not reach out to the city. We never once were contacted by the city for our side of the story. And from what I understand, Marquette Astronomical Society wasn't even spoken to as well. So they took it upon themselves to write a story, basically just saying what happened and why did the city make this work, and it seemed like a viable project. There were so many things that played into that. Most of all, COVID was the biggest problem. We decided to shut down the park in March, as everyone may have noticed, that basically the entire park was closed. And we also were closing the road for the salamanders, which would not allow access to that western side where they would have been able to do that. So on the other side of this, the city was going to start working with Marquette Astronomical Society to establish a permanent dark sky park at Kaufman Sports Complex now that the smokestacks are gone. Marquette Astronomical Society does seem to be in favor of this, and they actually have already been using that park now that the light pollution is basically been eliminated. So from what will happen now, it is completely off PIPAC's plate, so you guys can all take a sigh of relief knowing that that has passed. You guys have done your duty, and Parks and Rec Advisory Board will now take that up for open discussion, which I don't think we'll have any issues with that being established even by the end of the year, possibly. So that's pretty much everything that I had on that. Are there any further questions or comments?
I've got a couple of questions on a couple other issues.
Yeah.
And one is, you mentioned the deer management plan, and then the staff would like to work with NMU, DNR, and Moosewood. Do you know much about what the roles of each of those organizations would be?
At this point, no. We've had a lot of other discussion. Due to COVID, we pushed off a lot of agenda items with our committees. We've had a lot of reactionary type things that we've had to work on, like the July 4th beach issue that kind of respurred some of the park ordinance discussions. So things like the deer management plan, the fire safety plan is still a major concern, but again, there's just been a major shift in priorities. So we haven't had much of a chance to really dig back into that deer management plan, but what we're looking at, preliminary scope of things, we're going to be working with Moosewood not only for a renewal of a lease of that facility, but also work with them for possible negotiations of them possibly leading and helping out with a deer management plan where they are doing a deer census. And then we would possibly work with DNR and trying to figure out what resources they would be able to have available for basic recommendations that we can put into a plan for what we need to do to manage the herd out there, and possibly even utilize the DNR if there was ever a recommendation for a call of a herd. If a call was necessary, it would go out to a bid, I'm assuming, and we would like to lean on the DNR just to kind of make sure that it's done the most appropriate way.
Okay. You mentioned, and it makes sense that Moose would be involved. I mean, they're on site in essence. Would SWP be involved at all too, or?
Yeah, I did speak with Carl Lindquist a little bit about it right before quarantine. I haven't had a chance to pick that back up with him, but I know that Moosewood and Superior Watershed Partnership and there was a couple of people at NMU I was reaching out with as well that would be interested in assisting and organizing a team to do a deer census.
Okay. The only other question I have wasn't in your report, but last meeting we had a presentation by the Girl Scouts concerning the hammock stands. Is that just sort of on hold until we get through all this, or what happened to that?
Yeah, I sent an email probably, I'd like to say June, kind of with or maybe it was July with an update. At this point, we hadn't heard from her, and we basically thought it was just kind of a dead issue. We'd like to pick this back up next year, hoping that things have passed and that she would be willing to head this project up again. At this point, from other discussions that we had prior to everything happening, we kind of all agree that Presque Isle Park might not be the best venue for it.
Right.
We were looking more into Matson Park, but especially Tourist Park, where we have a lot of campers who come in with basically just a hammock. So when they show up with just a hammock, they can't attach to our trees. They have no way to camp.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure that out, and we're hoping to pick those discussions back up with her in the spring.
Okay. Well, I certainly agree that I don't think Presque Isle Park is necessarily the best place for that, but there are other places. I think you're right. I think it would be a good idea. So, okay, that was my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
When we, Andrew, when we did the presentation to the city commission back in January, was it? Which feels like a lifetime ago. One of the things we talked about was the deer management plan and specifically community education and what the community's involvement in like feeding the deer and things like that, how that would impact things going forward with the deer on the island. And I'm wondering if part of that deer management plan will include education. Are we still going to try to find a way to move forward with educating the public?
Yes, education was one of the biggest parts of that deer management plan when it came to, you can't just feed deer. There's a reason why you shouldn't feed the deer, and this is the reasons why. We're hoping that we would have some kind of campaign that we'd be able to launch, not just there, but for all parks, because it's not just Presque Isle Park that we have issues. So our biggest concern has been a couple of individuals that are suspected of feeding deer on a regular basis. One of them was confronted back in February, and the PD has actually been investigating still out at Presque Isle. Obviously, things kind of died off when the island closed for a while, but the PD has been back out there and they have been setting up trail cams, and they have been keeping an eye on a few people that they think are feeding deer. So by catching some of those individuals and also starting like a public education campaign, we feel like that would probably be a great start with calling the feeding of the animals. But that's something that we're looking to definitely have addressed in the deer management plan.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Wonder, I'm kind of new. I've been gone most of the time since I've been appointed on family business. I have just a couple questions I'd like to throw out. Those big dead red pine to the west of the band shelter and that one red pine that's failing on the cliff there. As root rots take out the root systems of those red pine, you don't even need a wind for them to fall over. And if they do fall over, they're going to hit seeding there. So we've got another concert coming up. They're going to have the orchestra concert. I think it's Sunday. And I always get a little nervous sitting there listening to the concerts, looking at those trees. Just wondering if there's any plans to remove some of those large dead red pine that could impact visitors there.
Not that I'm aware of, but I did last time. I do recall in one of the last meetings you were in, you did mention something about this.
Right.
I did take your notes and submit it to our arborist.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'm going to follow up with him just to kind of see what type of investigation they've done out at the island lately to see if, I mean, they do a lot of tree inspections in all of our parks and along the city on a city property. I mean, it's obviously very hard to track every single tree, especially on 363 acres at Prescott Park alone. But though exactly what you're talking about, those high priority areas where we've got people congregating frequently, that's something that we should take a look at. So I'll definitely ask him to take a look at those. I think that we actually have lost a couple of trees there recently too.
Yeah.
So
That'd be great. The other question I had, I've a couple times in the nice weather after the university got back in session, and I think twice there was maybe 100 people up at Black Rocks jumping off, and it's not just a COVID distance issue. I'm wondering, I'm sure you guys have addressed liability when you get that kind of a crowd up there, people jumping and drinking. I know you're not supposed to drink, but some of them were drinking and in crowds, and some were getting pushed off. It just seems like that's a real liability issue.
yeah, obviously we don't encourage it. We don't say anything out there about it. We just basically say if you're going to do it at your own risk. You do so at your own risk, and that essentially does release us from liabilities with it.
So you reviewed that. We're not really liable if someone does get hurt there?
Yeah, yeah. And there has been multiple incidents where people have gotten hurt out there. It's, again, it just kind of falls back onto them. They're the ones jumping off the rock. They're the ones making that decision. I don't know if anyone would really be supportive of us putting signs out there, no jumping off the rocks.
If anyone would like to go around the island and look at a few of the spots where, again, I'm not worried about trees unless there's targets, and like the benches at the band shelter and a few other spots. If anyone would be interested, I'd be happy to give them some insight into some of that. I've just been involved a couple times with trees on a perfectly calm day falling over and hitting tents and campgrounds and things like that. So you can't really look at a tree and say it isn't going to happen. It's a risk value. And I'd be happy to walk through it with anyone, the people that are managing the removals out there.
Yeah, Bob, I would actually be interested in doing that. Maybe what we could even do is just send out an email saying, hey, any committee members who want to go for a ride along at the islands. I wouldn't mind doing that maybe sometime in October when the colors are nice.
Okay.
And then we can also take a look and see, like, you can start seeing when trees are dropping their leaves too. I mean, if there's obvious signs of decay. Yeah. So that would be I wouldn't mind planning a day out of the office to do that. I've been stuck in this office for way too long, so yeah. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay, so moving on, there's no new business on the agenda, no old business on the agenda. So I suppose that takes us to committee member comment. I'm going to go in order on my screen if that's okay with you guys. So we'll start with Amy. And you're muted. There you go. Do you have anything to say?
Hello. Well, the last topic kind of sparked the question for personal injury accidents. Were we able to get a report on that? Have we had a lot of accidents?
There has been, but I haven't had any while I've been in my position. I do know that, well, actually, no, I was here when the two people got swept off the rocks, but they were out there when they shouldn't have been. I know of another instance 10 or so years ago when an individual dove in head first and I believe it has in a wheelchair now. So there's some items like that. Again, if we start getting into that and start talking with the attorney, to limit people, to tell them what they can or cannot do out there, we would probably start opening up a can of worms. And it's better just to tell people that, you know, you're entering this park and you're doing these activities at your own risk.
Oh, right. I'm asking mostly because that was on the agenda, but there wasn't a report from the police department. Is that what PI stood for? Personal injury
Presque Isle
accident?
incidents, yes. So that,
Incidents.
so what we normally do is I'll report to everyone, like, number of parking tickets, which this year there was a significant amount of tickets. I wasn't able to get those final numbers for everyone, but an occasional MIP, an occasional property damage, or maybe one of the gates getting pulled out. So that's kind of usually what I report. The PD has had their hands full lately, so they asked if they could forego giving a report this meeting, and I understood. So I told them I'll check again in October. But I'll try and see if maybe I can get a total count of parking tickets. But I do recall that in the month of July, I think the PD wrote almost 380 parking tickets just at Black Rocks alone.
Wow.
So they're definitely going through there quite a bit.
Okay, thanks. I don't have anything else.
Ron?
No comment. Finally got it off.
Thanks. Bob?
I think I covered everything. Thank you.
Okay. Barb?
I think just to mention, at a recent city commission meeting, they were going to vote on the smoking part of our rules or the ordinances or however it's going to come to be. And actually, I had a discussion with Sally Davis, and Bob and I wrote some letters, but Sally had come across some discrepancies in some of the previous ordinances that would really need to be cleaned up before we put something new on there. And there was really some archaic language in there that would have caused some major problems. So I think we're moving closer to having it done. In fact, they put a timeline on it, and so it's my understanding that has not been just thrown out. It's being worked on. The language is being cleaned up from existing ordinances, and ultimately there will be a vote on it and hopefully pass.
Yeah, if I can speak to that real quick. So essentially, that was one of the other things that really took up a lot of my time this summer, stemming from July 4th and the beach party. We were working with a couple individuals who were leading some beach cleanups. And on top of that, there was some discussion of, well, why can't we just ban smoking in parks? It's like, well, PIPAC already got the ball rolling on this for Presque Isle. Maybe what we need to do is just evaluate all the parks ordinances in a whole. So everything that PIPAC has done, everything that you guys have approved and set forth for proposal, that is with the attorney. So they are taking that and they are making specific land use ordinances that are going to affect Presque Isle Park only. So smoking isn't going to necessarily be a specific to Presque Isle. Now we're looking at multiple ordinances that are going to affect all parks, and then some that are going to be specific to Presque Isle. So I apologize again with the delay of all that, but now we're looking at a whole parks-wide thing, and the Parks and Rec Advisory Board got that ball rolling back in July. So we will have no smoking in parks, probably in a commission vote, more than likely before Christmas. If not, it'll probably happen before the summer for parks-wide, just with everything. That's something that the attorneys and myself and John Swenson and multiple other people in the city that are evaluating and looking on and making sure that we're not missing anything, and that also everything that PIPAC had put forth was getting done as well, including food trucks and everything else. So.
Phil?
Okay, am I
You're on.
audible? I don't really have a comment, but I am kind of curious about this little web thing I saw about a boat problem on the breakwall out there today. Or should I ask about that?
So we had an individual boat in distress. Apparently they ran into some issues up along Big Bay. How they didn't manage to sink their boat, I don't know. But they are now in Presque Isle Marina with a giant hole in the side. I'm absolutely stunned that they didn't sink on their way here. So they originally are a mooring field user, and they cannot make it to Cinder Pond. And what's happening now, there is a crane on its way to Presque Isle, and they will shut down that area temporarily to lift that boat out of the water to get it out for repairs. So that's probably what you saw. And the city is aware of it, and that individual is dealing with it.
Okay.
It's
Sounds like
unfortunate.
it.
Oof. Eric?
Yeah, I just got a couple things. Going back to that smoking ban on the island, how are you going to enforce that? I've had an earful from officers and some park staff about like the tickets that you're just mounting up so fast and how that's being handled. How are you going to handle smoking? How are you going to stop smoking on the island?
Again, that's just PD enforcing it. They're going to have to go out and patrol. They see someone smoking, more than likely will be a first time warning, second time ticket. But also now that it is an actual ordinance, not just a policy, you can tell someone, hey, there's actually an ordinance, no smoking out here. So, and the public can also call it in as well. So,
one of the things I've noticed is people don't really take the park patrol, not so much the park patrol now that says it on the side of the Marquette police car, but the usual park patrol, people usually don't take them serious. And I'm wondering if there's a way that they could get like a different uniform or something that makes them a little more authoritarian.
Yeah, I can speak with our police chief a little bit more about their operations, but
just their presence would look better if they could have some kind of uniform and
okay.
That anyway. Yeah, I'm just going to reaffirm Moosewood will work with the deer census. We've increased membership and volunteers, so it should be good for that. Hopefully next year if COVID goes away or subsides. And like I said before we had this meeting, I think I'll get Moosewood involved in the Leave No Trace. I'll push to get us a member of that. Maybe that'll help when we get around to talking about that next year. That'll be it.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
Does the smoking include vaping?
I'm sorry?
Yes.
It does. I was wondering if the smoking included vaping.
Yep.
Orville, you have any comments?
Yes, I've got 3 issues I wanted to bring up. Number one, I see we have some vacancies. Are we doing anything on that at the present time, or recruiting, or what?
Yeah, so that position has been, actually, there's only 1 vacancy from what, or no, there is 2. 11, yeah, there's 2. So those positions have been advertised through the city manager's office. I was going to put that on the agenda next meeting in October under new business membership. So there'll be an open discussion again for avenues for members to help recruit and ways to get someone involved, or if they know someone that might be a good candidate to encourage them to go talk to them. So.
Okay, the other issue, I noticed on the police log in the Mining Journal, police departments issuing citations for persons locked in after 11 p.m. Could you check with the PD and see if is that a trespass violation, or what are they ticketing them for, I guess, so when you do talk to them?
Trespass violation. Yeah, I wasn't able to get the numbers from them. They did mention that there were quite a few lock-ins, and it's a trespass ticket.
Okay. The last item, director report from our March 11th meeting indicated staff was encouraging special events such as competitive races to move from the island to alternate locations. How is that working out? The reason I bring it up, I noticed recently high schools were holding some races out at the island. And is there any fee charged for these events that do take place there?
Yeah, we do. So actually, the big thing that happened this year is we didn't have any special events. We did cancel, well, most of the groups that scheduled with us did cancel. But we did manage to get the large events that do end up closing the road, like Moose on the Loose, Marquette Marathon's even reevaluating their route. We're trying to discourage events that would cause a significant public disruption, especially on the weekends. The high school races we're not too concerned with because those generally happen during the weekdays and also during business hours, so it's not generally a high impact event, and they do not require the road to be closed. We do sometimes extend walking hours for them, but it's the events like Moose on the Loose or some of the other ones where they want to rent the whole park and they cause a major public disruption where it's a Saturday afternoon and we've got a lot of tourists in town and they're trying to drive out to the island and they've got a car parked at the road telling them they can't come in. Those are the types of events telling them that, I'm sorry, you're no longer welcome here.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
I just want to say thanks, Barb, for the update on the smoking ban. I have not seen all of the commission meetings, so I didn't know where that stood. So I appreciate that, and Andrew as well. And other than that, the only comment I have is I'm glad to see everybody and looking forward to doing this again in October and maybe walking the island with some of you. That sounds like a great idea. That's it.
Okay.
So I think we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to
moved.
adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
All right, everyone's in favor, I assume?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, cool. See you guys soon.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.